So after all this time, we have finally reached the finish line in terms of Professor Layton games. Professor Layton and the Azran Legacy is a breath of fresh air that I sorely needed after the slog that was first used. When I started playing Azran Legacy and saw the bombastic start that was Chapter 1, I already knew this game was gonna be a million times better than Professor Layton vs. Ace Attorney. Also, I had to get through 2 spin-off games to even reach the conclusion to the second trilogy, and that I say, is this a slam dunk of a game and a great ending to the prequel trilogy? Or is this a major flop that should have never existed in the first place? I'm a fencer and I will gladly sit in the middle. Professor Layton and the Azran Legacy is a great enough game for what it is, but I can't help but feel like the soul, quote unquote, of this series is not really there. I could see it, but it is very faint. Let's get the puzzles out of the way. For the most part, they're fine. I think they're a major step up in comparison to the other games, but not really on the same level of the earlier games. That being said, I think the puzzles were overall fine. Not bad, but many weren't the greatest, and I think that's the perfect balance a game like this should attempt to strive for, first of all. Although, again, the endgame puzzles were still kind of easy in a way. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I'm a puzzle master at this shit because I've been playing Layton for like an entire year at this point. But it does feel a bit strange when you have games like Pandora's Box or heck, games like Lost Future that throw puzzles at yourselves that feel so impossibly difficult to comprehend at first glance. Never mind solve them. I have this conspiracy theory floating inside of my head where level 5 found out players can't really beat these final puzzles or whatever, so they can't actually finish the games. Or at least that's what they fear is actually happening, and in reality it is not. I mean, for fuck's sake, I just randomly clicked on the bottom screen for like the final puzzle. Well, okay, it wasn't that random, but I wasn't entirely sure I was doing the correct sequence, and then the game was like, do this and you win. It was so weird. Did you get 50 picarats for this shit? The amount of locations you explore is so varied in many ways. I can't believe that the concept of traveling around the world could be this much fun. Seeing the different weird places Layton and co visit and explore is pretty neat. And I like the weird stuff that happens whenever you visit said places. That's pretty damn cool. Unfortunately, this is also part of a bigger problem I actually have with this game. So the plot is all about this ancient civilization called the Azran that resemble humans very closely. Basically an ancient race that was at the top of their world in terms of technology and science, although their stuff kinda teeters on the edge of magic at times. Professor Layton, Luke and Emmy were invited by this guy, Professor Sycamore, to see this living mummy with their own eyes, and lo and behold, it's not a mummy, but a girl part of the Azran race. This is Aurora, a messenger who was contained in that block of eyes for one sole reason, to send out a message. Duh, she's a messenger, I just said that. But you see, she's also amnesiac. I mean, sleeping for thousands of years inside a giant block of ice will probably do that to you. And so it is our job to hunt down the 5 Azran eggs to allow Aurora to remember more about her memories and perform her duty, basically. If anyone is to uncover the Azran Legacy, then allegedly good things will happen. Someone said that, I don't know. If anyone noticed, then yeah, you're right. There isn't much mystery about this plot. It's just finding out more about the Azran civilization, which itself could be the mystery, except for the fact that they barely do anything to feed into this mystery. Like, we barely learn anything about who the Azran were but for the final 15 minutes of the game. In fact, the reason we set up in this journey to find a bunch of eggs and to travel to 5 different places is to find more about the Azran and recover the eggs. And only 2 of these places provide relevant lore about who the Azran were, or rather what the Azran did in their time. This isn't to say each of these locations doesn't mention anything about the Azran, but dude, they turned an arid place into a jungle? Cool, man. They made the water waves of this place peaceful? Sure, man. I think them having control over their wind is like much more interesting than, I don't know, that. Another thing that makes this a bit lame is that the Azran architecture that is depicted is very striking and very interesting, and yet we barely see any of it. Only 2 of the locations we explore have Azran related architecture, and it's not the craziest thing ever, but it is interesting, and it would tap into Herschel's job basically, that being an archaeologist. Well, he's mainly a teacher, but still, he goes in expeditions plenty of times. I just think this was a missed opportunity, especially when you could have taken the time and established that the Azran people were actually secretly going to destroy the world if you solve their riddles or whatever. At no point in this entire game, the mere fact of Azran people are cray-cray ever crossed anyone's mind until Aurora almost decided to kill herself by jumping off. Like, her freaking out that, oh no, the Azran legacy, that's a bad thing, is very sudden. This also ties into my next point that has to do with all the locations, but what's up with the length of chapter 4? I think chapter 4 took me almost 4 hours to get through. The disparity in length is astronomical. Every other chapter took me around an hour or less than an hour long. There's a lot of fluff here, and considering my wish to explore more about the Azran architecture, yep, there's a lot of silly stuff we do here. Make an old guy be his old self again by crafting makeshift glasses so he can see again. The harmony puzzle thingy where they pass the egg around. There's this big wolf that is in pain because the thing around his neck was strangling him. I guess, bro. The story felt weirdly flat during this chapter. Really, the game is just go find 5 eggs. I did really enjoy the harmony logic puzzle, that was pretty cute. The characters are interesting to say the least. We have Aurora here being this weird hybrid of damsel in distress and guide. She's a very specific kind of character and one that I think serves the game good enough. Then we have Professor Sycamore. He's just Gene Descalé, bro. What are you fooling, bro? I guess the developers weren't too concerned that this guy kind of resembled Descalé in a way, but if you didn't figure out this guy is Descalé based on his looks, then his voice should do the trick. That and the fact Raymond is around for pretty much the entire game inside this aircraft. You know, his fucking henchman. And we team up with this guy in the end. Pretty ballsy of them considering Descalé's actions amounted to nothing more but an impossible disguise and destroying an entire town. You know, his disguise here is a million times more plausible than whatever the fuck happened in Miracle Mask, which now that I finished this game, you can really just skip Miracle Mask and nothing would have changed. Everything that happened in that game didn't matter. It wasn't even tied to something Azran related. Even Spectre's Skull had a tie-in, and I like that they used the thing from Eternal Diva, yes, the movie, to push forward this narrative. But I bet not many of you watch the movie, like not a lot of people seen the movie. I guess Miracle Mask introduced the thing at the end of the game, the same cutscene that showed Discord's and embarrassing aura loss and this other jackass, but like that's kind of it. Wow, so Miracle Mask is like the most skippable game ever made. This guy's name is Leon Bronev. This guy is kind of a jerk. He's basically a guy who's fucking crazy about the Azran technology and wants to have access to it, only for it to bite him in the ass. Now here's the thing about all of this. Herschel Layton, Gene Descalé, and Leon Bronev are related. Layton and Descalé are brothers and Leon is their father. Yet, I feel like this entire revelation is weirdly sidelined, like it didn't receive the amount of focus it should have gotten. All of it was kinda sudden. I also expected a heart-to-heart moment between Herschel and Leon, but we never got that. Like, oh yeah, that's your real dad. Do you not have anything to say about that? No? Okay. Also, it was hilarious that the end of the world just started and this guy is sitting there like, I wasted my entire life chasing this stupid ass legacy. I'm such a loser. Like, oh my gosh, shut the fuck up. Honestly, kind of weird how rushed these sequences are, but I'm not too surprised. I mean, they killed Herschel Layton in this game. Also, they killed Herschel Layton for like 5 seconds. Then everyone is alive and well. Emmy decided to be important for once in her lifetime and decided, oh yeah, I work with this guy. And every other moment we share was just me monitoring your ass. What a way to recontextualize everything. And it's kind of lame they copped out of it. Like, Amy wasn't actually evil, more so she had her own agenda. Fair enough, this doesn't stop it from being a bit lame. The cutscene where she shows her true colors, quote unquote, was genuinely perfect. I did not expect that, and I wish they stuck with that idea. Oh well, I can't win every single time, I guess. It really does feel like Descalé and Emmy had a way different purpose when they got conceived and didn't really know how to achieve that purpose, so they decided to write these characters like this. It's fine, I just wish the game spent more time on these characters, character traits, whatever, instead of the bomb holes that are the Azran. It's like, let's be fair, after I just finished this game, man, the Azran people are lame, bro, they're lame. Also, this game spends a bit too much time with these two comic relief characters, like, bro, nobody cares, bro. Another thing about this game is that I kinda just missed the first trilogy, man. And yeah, I know I can go back and replay those games again if I want to. My point is, I kind of like how those games presented themselves. I found it extremely charming that they reanimated an intro cutscene for Curious Village. But here's the thing, if I sit and think about it, they don't really merge that well. The prequel trilogy deals into stuff that veers into the fantastical side of things. Meanwhile, the first trilogy is all about implausible yet scientific mysteries, and I kinda like that a lot from this series. Meanwhile, the prequel trilogy gives us a prehistoric dino surviving during modern times, Las Vegas, and some dumb fuck old ass civilization that created a sentient race and then proceeded to go extinct. How do these trilogies connect? They are wildly different in scope. It kinda doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Another thing I want to touch upon is this game's slight focus on human rights and free will. There were moments during the main story where the characters kind of just mentioned those words, and we were told about how Targent uses archaeologists as slaves and whatnot. And then later on, we are told about how the Azran civilization created a sentient race to be used as slaves. Because, you know, the most mundane asks, they thought they were like above them because, you know, they thought they were gods and stuff like that. And then that sentient race they created, yeah, they rebelled and slayed the entire Azran race. A neat little parallel can be drawn between the Azran and Targent, which is something that I noticed during my playthrough, and I really like that. Lastly, the minigames. I ranted about the lack of them in the crossover, so it's nice to see them here. They're just part of what makes a Professor Layton game a Professor Layton game in my opinion. First up, we have Dress Up. It's a very basic dress up minigame where you have to fulfill the conditions set up by these lovely ladies and create an outfit dedicated to their tastes. Basic, but kind of fun figuring out what you need to use and fulfilling the requirements. Nut Roller is a cute minigame where you figure out how to roll stuff on this thing to get the nut to stay inside the goal. It's an interesting puzzle, and I think it's very fun watching these balls roll around. Pretty cute. My favorite might be Blooms and Shrooms. The concept is very neat. This looks like a puzzle I would see in the main story. In fact, it reminds me of a specific puzzle from Versus. I really like that one puzzle, so the fact that I get to do more of them here is pretty cool to me. Thumbs up. Oh yeah, there's this thing called World Times, and it's just a bunch of newspapers. I don't know why the game kinda hyped up this feature since it's not even a minigame or whatever. The episodes make a comeback. Yay. There are treasures you can collect. I only collected 8. I'm not very good at treasure hunting, I suppose. And finally, this game has Street Pass functionality? Street Pass is dead. I'm sure this was a fun thing, but I can't do anything about it. And plus, I'm playing this on an a very real Nintendo 3DS that unfortunately doesn't have access to this kind of stuff because, well, the 3DS eShop is there. What makes the Street Pass worthy of being kept around? And that's it. Professor Layton and the Azran Legacy was a game that did more than enough to save the prequel trilogy and turn something meh into a good trilogy, all things considered. I think the game is great for what it tries to do, while also acknowledging the game could have been way better than what we got. But to be honest, this game felt like a masterpiece after me surviving Versus and the quite forgettable Miracle Mask, which barely got me any views, so fuck you, nobody cares about you, Miracle Mask, you're odd and lame and stupid. And that's it. It is famously known that they have never ever made any other Layton game after this one. Nothing, nada, zilch. Okay, they made one more game. It's a game following a completely different character. I don't know what to expect, considering the consensus I heard from fellow Layton fans is that this game is bad. Well then, if I'm gonna cover a series, then I'm gonna see everything it has to offer. However, next review is not gonna be Layton's mystery journey. No. We are gonna be playing a much better game, the greatest piece of fiction ever conceived, the best game ever made in the history of history. If you can't tell I'm being sarcastic, then I don't know. I guess I just suck. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.